Hey everybody, and welcome to another month in review. So in this series of videos I talk about all of the new to me board games that I played during the previous month, this month covering December 2022, and I rank those games from my least favourite all the way up to my most favourite. Now as usual I have a big variety of games here. We've got old games, we've got new games, we've got very light games, and we've got pretty heavy games as well. Now before I get started on the 10 games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer when it comes to purchasing board games here in the UK. And if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 10, I have the first of the 2022 releases with Theurgy. So Theurgy is an area majority game that's quite different to a lot of the other titles of that genre out there, and it reminded me a little bit of Dominant Species, as in this one you have these kind of two priest pieces moving around this modular grid trying to convert people into your cult or your religion, and you're going to do that by taking one of 4 actions. So I did quite like the way on your turn you had quite a simple turn structure: activate one of the actions and you cannot do the same action back to back. Now you're going to be putting these presence tokens down on the borders of these different hexes and triggering a conversion and trying to convert them to your colours based on those majorities. You can summon monsters into play. You're trying to establish these different kind of temples, I suppose, and it's going to be a race to get to a certain amount of temples on the board based on different conditions. Now there is some kind of unpredictability with this one, maybe a bit too much for my comfort level, where you have some take that cards or some aha moment cards where there's no way you can predict what other people are going to do. There's monsters that can come into play which, throw the rules on its side and change core rules, which are quite hard to remember, and generally I found the board state to be very busy. There's pieces everywhere, there's tokens everywhere, it's hard to remember what each player can do and what each god can do, and those style of games are a bit of a deterrent for me, and I tend to find them a little bit overwhelming and not enjoyable, and sadly that's how I felt about Theurgy. Now I did quite like some of the production choices, as normally these styles of games come with tons of plastic, whereas this one, all the monsters were more like traditional wooden meeples, which I thought was quite a cool touch. But other than that, the gameplay is just not my style, so therefore, it's not for me, and hence why it's number 10. At number 9, I have Zuli. So Zuli is definitely a family-friendly, almost childlike drafting game, something in the vein of Sushi Go, as each round you are going to have a hand of cards. You're going to be close drafting these cards in a pass and draft fashion, taking either animals out or taking these enclosures out. And eventually, once everyone's drafted all their cards, you're going to be building a zoo with those cards, trying to get the right animals in the right enclosures. Some of these animals will combo with each other, some of them will take up more room than others, so you need to make sure you have the right sized enclosures. And you have these kind of tacked on abilities as well, where you can end up breaking rules. Like normally you wouldn't be able to put dangerous animals together, or you cannot mix dangerous and friendly animals together, whereas some cards can let you break those rules. There's quite a cool balancing aspect of the game where you need to be making sure that you not only have the animals, which are going to score you points of course, but you need to make sure you have the enclosures for those animals, because any animal that you can't kind of cage is going to be worth negative points at the end of the round. And I also quite like the forward trajectory of this one, where each round you keep the animals in your hand, draft more of them, and then you can rebuild your zoo each time. So you're always getting more and more points. It was definitely nothing negative about this game, it's just not quite what I'm looking for, for my collection. But I passed this one on to a friend of mine who's got younger children, and I'm sure they're going to be having a great time with it. So for what it does, I think it does extremely well, but just not for me personally. At number 8, I have Project L. So this is a polyomino style game mixed with a degree of engine building, as essentially you are going to have these really nice tactile plastic pieces, and you're trying to slot them in these cardboard tiles, which are almost dual layered, and trying to fill up those shapes perfectly with these different kind of Tetris style pieces. But I like the engine building aspect to this one, because every time you complete one of these tiles, not only are you going to add that tile to your scoring pile, which of course is the objective of the game, but you're also going to get rewarded with a new shape. So the more you complete these tiles, the more shapes you're going to get, which lets you complete the more ambitious tiles out there, which will score you more points, of course. So it has this cool forward momentum. Again, another game that I like the turn structure of, where on your turn you get to take 3 actions, which are going to be either take a new shape, upgrade an existing shape to a bigger one or a better one, take new tiles, or even place 1 polyomino piece on each of your tiles as a massed action, which again, you can really play that quite efficiently by adding up or collecting the tiles you need, or the tokens you need, taking one mass action and completing several tiles in one time. And it always feels satisfying when you do that. So I don't think this game did anything tremendously new. It felt like a hybrid of a bunch of different games, almost a bit like Silver and Gold, if you're familiar with that one. But that extra layer of engine building, you know, I did like that. And it's definitely a game that I'm not going to object to play, despite not setting my world on fire. It definitely does what it does quite well. So that is Project L at number 8. At number 7, I have Hot Lead, which is a new card game by Dr. Rainer Knizia. This one is featherweight light, you know, extremely easy to play, and it's a simultaneous card selection game. As each round, you're going to reveal a number of scoring cards equal to the number of players, and then to obtain those scoring cards, everybody is going to select one of their numbered cards, reveal them at the same time. Whoever's played the highest number will take the leftmost card. Whoever's played the lowest number is going to take the rightmost card, and so on. And you're trying to collect these different sets of these different crimes, I suppose. But you don't want to collect too many of the same type, because you can go bust if you collect 4 of the same. And there's additional twists as well, where if you collect one of each type, you get bonus points, or if you have exactly 3 of any type, you get some bonus points as well. So you want to be on that real fine line of what you're trying to collect. Now, I did like how breezy this game is, you know, extremely easy to play. It takes around 10 to 15 minutes. I do feel like the random distribution of the numbered cards can be a bit swingy at times, because, you know, sometimes just by sheer luck, somebody might get a bunch of like middling cards, or someone might get all the low valued cards, which might make it difficult for them to get a well balanced variety of the different cards available. But, you know, it doesn't try to be anything it's not. Again, that push your luck factor, I think, made the game better. And for a 15-minute game, you could do a lot worse than Hot Lead. At number 6, I have Lacrimosa, which was one of my most anticipated games for 2022. And you can see here, this game definitely didn't inspire me tremendously. I thought it was a solid, well-rounded game. I'd probably rank it about 6.5 out of 10, but I was wanting, you know, a 9 or a 10 out of 10 here, because I love the theme and the setting so much. You know, I'm a big classical music fan, but sadly the game itself, despite being solid and nothing glaringly obviously wrong with it, it just didn't do anything new or anything exciting. It was very much middle of the road Euro mechanisms. The only thing I did like was the way that you did have a small deck of cards, and you're managing that deck of cards to take actions and to improve your income for the following round. So this kind of system where you have to tuck these cards in was cool, because to get one thing, you're going to have to sacrifice something else, and you're even upgrading those cards as you go to get more powerful actions, or even get double or triple actions. So I did like that. It had a good degree of full progression, as you know, the deck would get better and better as you go. But all the different aspects of the game were solid, but there was just nothing there to, again, really inspire me or to hook me to come back and explore further. I felt like once I played this a couple of times, I'd seen everything the game had to offer. And if you are a more seasoned Eurogamer and played a ton of them, this game isn't going to offer anything new at all. At number 5, I have Galileo Project, which is another 2022 release. Now, this is a medium lightweight tableau engine building style game, as you are drafting these cards from this communal board. These cards are going to come in the form of these characters, which will either give you instant abilities or endgame scoring by tucking them under your player board. Then you are using influence those characters give you in order to acquire these robots. And these robots are going to allow you to climb these tracks associated to the planets that they're assigned to. And those tracks will not only give you endgame points, but they'll also give you increase your capacity to do things in the game by allowing you to tuck more cards under your board, or scoring you points based on certain types of robots you've collected. And you've also got some public objectives that you're trying to race towards. A very nice turn structure in this game. You know, either take a character card, buy a robot card, or buy a technology card, which will give you again a one-off or ongoing ability. Great forward momentum. You know, there's no pulling teeth in this game. Everything feels like you're moving forward. It only takes around an hour to play. And another game where if you are looking for a gateway plus or something to bridge the gap between a gateway and a midweight Euro, this is a fantastic option for that, because it introduces a lot of well blended mechanisms. So that is Galileo Project at number 5. Okay, so let's get into the top 4 games now, and this is where my commendations begin. So at number 4, I have Municipium, which is an older Rainer Knizia title that has very much flown under the radar. Definitely nobody's talking about this one, but this is a pretty quirky, almost an area majority game, as you are trying to control these different buildings in Rome. And you're going to do that by moving your little player pawns around. And controlling these regions is useful for a number of different reasons. So number one, you want to be in majority for when this kind of prefect piece moves around the map, and when it lands in these certain locations, if you have the majority there, then you collect these kind of bonus tokens, which is the the aim of the game is to collect different sets of meeples, or these bonus tokens which can proxy any of the meeples. And for every set you get, you're going to gain a coin, and then it's going to be a race to get to 4 or 5 coins, depending on how long you want the game to be. But also controlling these regions is useful for the fact that each of these locations has a unique ability assigned to it, which can give you a lot of stroke and a lot of power during the game. And those things can be things such as only needing 3 to complete a set rather than just the 4. One can be to beat the priority in terms of initiative order, which can be very important in this game. One can be to deploy more meeples on the board to give you the ability to get the ones that you really want. It's actually a game with some nuance involved. When I was teaching this to two new people who hadn't played it before, I hadn't played it before either, of course, but once I taught this to people, I'm thinking, I'm not sure how this is going to go because it sounds very dry. I think it's not going to bring out a lot of fun, and people aren't going to enjoy it. But when we got to that half point in the game, I think that a switch just triggered in everybody's head and think, you know what, this is actually a very clever game. There's more here than we initially thought, and the game really starts to come alive as you start to try and block people getting from certain meeples that they want, and so on. It is actually a very interesting design, and I'm quite excited to show you guys more about it. At number 3, I have Tramban, which is a 2-player only game that brings back memories, or has a lot of similarities to a game called Lost Cities. But despite me saying that, I do think that these games are different enough to warrant owning both. But this one is another card game where you are trying to create runs of cards from low to high. You can have gaps if you like, so you can create 1s, 3s, 5s, 7s, 10s, and so on, or you can create every gap in between if you manage to pull that off. But I like in this one, every round you are forced to play at least one card on these different rows of coloured cards, and that is going to be a countdown timer as to when that type of card is going to cash out. And as soon as you play that 4th card, then every single, say, red card is going to cash out. And that can benefit you or benefit your opponent. So you want to be making sure that you are at least competing in the different fields, because if your opponent keeps on playing red cards and they have a great red run, then they're going to keep on scoring those red cards and you're not. So you've got to be very careful of that. But the game's done a great job of making sure that if you want to keep on spamming the same colour, then you're not building any more runs of it. So you're going to have to give up one thing in order to do another. And this game is very tight in terms of the way you manage your money, because in order to actually build the runs in the first place, you have to invest in these station cards, which will increase your multipliers. And the bigger multipliers you want, the more expensive it becomes. So sometimes you have to give up a bunch of cards that you could potentially use for your runs just in order to convert it to money, because it has that kind of multi-use card system. A very well-designed 2-player game, one that I think should be on, or should be more appreciated and more talked about in the realms of 2-player only games, because when people talk about 2-player games, they normally talk about the same few titles. This one is rock solid and can definitely hold its own with those classic 2-player games, and again, it should be in print, but sadly it's not. So that is Tramban at number 3. At number 2, I have Amsterdam, which is a reprint of Macau by Stefan Feld. So this is a weird game. It's a kind of a resource management pick up and deliver style game with a bit of engine building as well, as you are acquiring these cards, or in fact you're forced to take these cards. However, if you can't get these cards built in time, then they can end up acquiring you negative points. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect resources to move your little boat around the dock, do a little pick up and deliver game going on, try to increase your presence on the main map itself. But I love, love, love the way that you have to manage your resources in this game, as you are drafting resources, or you're taking resources through a dice draft. And basically the higher value dice are great, because they will mean you get more resources. So if you say take 5 black resources, or pick the 5 black dice, then you're going to get 5 black resources. However, you are not going to get those resources until 5 turns time. So it has this long-term planning thing going on here, where you can take fewer resources but get them sooner, or take loads of resources but have to wait a while. What a cool twist. I've never seen it before, and I remember reading it in the rulebook for the first time thinking, you know what, that's a very cool mechanism, and I've not seen that before, and I'm sure I'm going to like it. And I'm very happy to say that in practice that mechanism works as well as it reads. Now, as with Stefan games, this is pretty, it's very mechanical. It's a bunch of mechanisms put together. There's no real thematic ties here, but it does pick up and deliver well. I tend to like pick up and deliver games. There's some good planning there as well. Quite brain burnery. It can be quite punishing at times, and sometimes you can have great grandiose turns. Sometimes you can have pretty pathetic turns because you might only have 1 or 2 resources to play with, but that's all part of the game, and it's definitely one of those games where the more you play it, the better you're going to get at it, because right now I'm terrible at this one, but I'm really intrigued to get better at it, which is always a good sign. So that is Amsterdam at number 2. And finally, at number 1, and my favourite game for December 2022 is First Class. Now, First Class is essentially the card game version of Russian Railroads, which just so happens to be one of my favourite games of all time. Now, of course, there are a lot of similarities between the two, but there are some differences as well. This one is more streamlined, it's easier to get to the table and easier to teach. Now, this one, as I mentioned, it is a card game, and it's a card drafting game, as all the actions you can take are displayed out each round in 3 rows of cards. Now, of course, you're going to draft those cards and take the corresponding action, but as soon as a certain number of cards from each row is taken, the remainder of those cards is going to get wiped from the round. So you need to be very careful about how you prioritize the things you're taking. And much like Russian Railroads, you are trying to improve and upgrade your railway line to increase the yield of points it pays out during scoring phases. You're trying to build this separate track as well to give you instant points and ongoing engine building benefits every time it comes to a scoring phase. Might let you, upgrade more cars or let you move your train even further. And everything in this game feels good, and I really, really love the money mechanism in this game, as when you acquire coins, you add them onto your player board in a particular order, and you have a strict capacity as to how many coins you can keep. But as you fill up your board, you always have to go from lowest to highest, but you can actually pull those coins off to take a bonus action in any order you want. And the more coins you get, the more powerful the actions get as well, which will let you upgrade any card, or let you move your conductor or move your train. It will let you put new 0 cards out there to increase your railway network or increase the length of it. Again, everything in this game feels good. It has a great forward momentum where in the first round you really don't gain too much. You probably get 10 points here or there, and in the final round you're getting dozens and dozens of points quite easily. So again, it always feels very satisfying, much like the original Russian Railroads. A great implementation of the game. It's how you do a proper card game. Do I, if I'm completely honest with myself, do I need both of them in the collection? I'm not quite sure long term, but for right now, I'm enjoying having both of them. And I think they're both great. Russian Railroads is right up there for me, but First Class is not far off, considering it is so similar, but different in a lot of ways as well. And there's some modularity here, so if you want to spice the game up a little bit, you can pick and choose which parts of the game you want to include. Again, that adds a bit more life into the game. So there we have it. That's my number 1 game, First Class. So there we have it. Those are all the games that I've played throughout December 2022. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel, and please do let me know what game has been the best for you during December 2022, because I'd love to hear it. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.